Hello, everyone. This is Dana Arshan-Kraslow, and welcome to the Dana Download. The Dana Download is a podcast where I introduce you to people from all different backgrounds of my life and also just industries that really spark my curiosity. Today, I have two of the most special guests, two friends who are so dear to me, who I love so much, and I can't wait for you to get to know them and hear their stories today. So first with me is Laura Bakst. She is the grandchild, or 3G, as we say, of two Holocaust survivors. She wrote a book on her, I believe, grandfather's life, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, called The Shoemaker's Son. She's also an insanely impressive attorney, a Harvard and a Cornell grad. We also have Arnie Podgorsky, who is the chair of the Massorti Foundation. He's also an attorney and has a million other incredible hobbies and a long, impressive bio. So we're going to get into all of that today. Thank you so much to both of you for being here.
Thanks for having us. This is so exciting.
Thank you, Dana. We're looking forward to it.
Laura, let's start with you. Our good friend introduced us. She had gone on a trip to Poland with the Polish embassy based out of DC and recommended both you and I for the trip. And that just kind of sparked our friendship immediately. I remember calling you when I was walking around my town, and that was our first conversation. Arnie also went on this trip to Poland. So we're going to talk about the trip. But Laura, let's talk about how you and I first met and how that trip to Poland kind of started for you, and then we'll get into the article that you both wrote.
Yeah, so we were connected, as you mentioned, by a mutual friend after I think both of us were officially on the trip. And I think it was sort of like an interesting time. I was really pleased to be connected to you as another 3G because I think I was a little apprehensive about going back to Poland as the first in my family to return since my grandparents, who were both from there, left post-war. And not to sort of get too far ahead, but I think this is sort of what we touch on in the article is sort of like the difficulties as, at least for me as a 3G, of returning to this place that seems so welcoming and interested in maintaining relationships with the Jewish community and balancing that with what I heard from my grandparents about not only the atrocities they experienced there, but like the actual participation of their family, of their friends and neighbors in what the Nazis were doing. So I think for me, having you on that trip, Dana, as someone who had sort of a similar family history tracing back to the region, was a real comfort for me as I was walking into this like real unknown experience.
Right. I remember we bonded so instantly, and it was so special for me, too, to have you there. And I should tell the listener, the viewer, the reason that I decided to have both Arnie and Laura on the podcast today is because together they wrote an incredible article called Travel and Teshuva. Is that how you pronounce it? Teshuva? Oh, Teshuva. Do you know that I've never actually said the word out before? I've always read it and never said Teshuva. Our tour through Poland's contradictions. So, Arnie, how did you and Laura even come together to start writing this article, and what has the reaction been to it? And tell us also about it.
I began to write an article not long after we got back, and completed a draft with which I was not thrilled. Laura and I chatted about my having run up against my own limits in addressing the subject. And it turned out that Laura was also drafting an article. So we thought, since we had had rather similar and sometimes very entertaining reactions to what we had seen in Poland, it might be fun to swap drafts and then see what happens. So we did that. And we found that our drafts had enough similarities that we could collaborate on an article, and it probably would be both fun and productive. And so that's what we did.
I love that. And for anyone unfamiliar, Teshuva really means returning, right? Returning to the land. How did you come up with the title for the article?
It's returning to one's spiritual heart, for lack of a better way to put it. But the concept of return in Judaism is to return to your spiritual home, which means that when something has gone wrong, when you've done something wrong, you've hurt somebody or what have you, you look inside yourself. You ask yourself, what is that really about at a deep level? Try and understand it. Maybe you apologize to the person who you hurt, but it's not just, oh, sorry, not sorry. It's a deep apology, which reflects a reckoning and an understanding and embracing what really occurred. Then one is able to return to relationship, to humanity, and to God. That is, I'm not a rabbi. That's the best I can do with Teshuva.
That's really impressive. So do you feel like, Laura, Arnie, do you feel like Poland is that spiritual homeland for both of you?
Let me take that one first. Firstly, I think one thing that Laura and I learned about each other as we wrote the article is that while we had common reactions to things and frankly a lot of laughs along the way, we also have different experiences. Laura is a granddaughter of someone who experienced the Holocaust in Poland and in the sense almost of oral Torah. Those experiences have been passed down to her along very appropriately with all of the emotions that go hand in hand. I don't have that. My father's family was principally in Ukraine. They were just wiped out. I mean, we can find no sign of them whatsoever. That is a trauma, a huge trauma, but different. It leaves me in a different place than where I understand Laura's experience left Laura. So we come at that question, I think, from two different places. For me, and now I'll stop putting words in Laura's mouth because
You've been right. You've been accurate.
Yeah, but Laura is phenomenal and in every way and very capable of answering this question as she will. Poland, for me, is not so much the land as it is representative of a larger Jewish home in Eastern Europe. So the quest for me in the trip was not finding a Jewish homeland or returning to a homeland. It was being able to associate myself with this very substantial part of Jewish history of the diaspora. And that's what was important to me.
Laura, do you want to add to that, or do you feel like he summed it up?
I mean, I think Arnie had sort of hit the nail on the head where like my perspective was a little different because, and I think I sort of think of this in the meaning of the word teshuva is like the heart of our article. The question we're posing is like, is Poland, which was, an occupied country, the nation itself didn't perpetrate the crimes, but certainly its people participated and sometimes in like fairly substantial and organized ways. And like, does Poland have to, do they owe some reckoning? Do they owe some sort of, their people owe some teshuva to people like us whose families were persecuted? And I think that is sort of the question that colored my experience going there and whether they have accomplished that. And so for me, I had a really positive experience. I met a lot of people who are doing tremendous work to grow and protect the Jewish community there. I think there has been a number of efforts. We visited the Polin Museum. We visited all these memorials, efforts to reckon with the history. But I think, and we talk about this in the article too, like my view is some of it is too little. Some of it arguably is too late. Some of it hasn't been in the robust way that I think accountability demands. But what do you do with that when you also have a nation that's trying to repair relations, that's making an effort, that's bringing people like us to that country, that wants to learn? And that is sort of the inherent tension I was dealing with. And I think I came out of there more open to it. I came out of that trip more willing to engage and feeling like even if, it's not 100% how I would like things to be, something substantial is better than nothing. And it's worth sort of building that relationship. I think there are a lot of Jews who feel differently. And I think Arnie and I can both give you examples of reactions to us going to Poland that, embodied this. There's a lot of harsh feelings and a lot of people who don't have any interest in having any relationship with Poland at all. So I think that was all sort of baked in for me into this trip and what it meant. And I don't know that I have a clear answer, but I certainly came out feeling more positive than I went in.
Yeah, my mom also, she's the daughter of my grandfather. She's the daughter of a Polish Holocaust survivor. And my papi was actually drafted to the Polish army after the war ended, after they knew that he had been in Auschwitz and lost both of his parents and siblings. And he wound up getting out of it, thankfully. But there was just so much resentment from my family. They couldn't understand why I want to keep going back. And my mom also, and I don't know if you can help me come up with a good answer because I've heard this from a lot of people. I keep telling them every positive aspect of Polish society that's trying to remember the Jews of its past. And so many people respond with, "Well, don't you think they just want Jews to come in so they can have your money and you can help with the economy?" And so, what do you respond to that?
I mean, that's not how I felt, right? That is not the impression I got. The impression I got was that there really was an interest in repairing relations. And I think a recognition of Polish history, right? So much of Polish history is Jewish history. And I'm not just talking about the World War II period. I'm talking about centuries. I mean, that if you ever go to the Polish Museum, you will see this so apparently, how intertwined Jewish history is with Polish history. And I think it's important, and I respect that they are trying to be true to that history. And so, I give sort of my unvarnished view, which is that I really wish some of these efforts came sooner. I really wish there was, I think, more accountability on some areas in terms of collaboration. But I also think they're doing tremendous work now. And at a time where I think anti-Semitism is very high globally, I'm not going to turn away, an olive branch when it presents. So I think and I think it's time too, right? I think there's something I think there's a reason that 3Gs are having these experiences when our grandparents and even our parents weren't able to go back. I think it is sort of the benefit of time and healing.
I feel the same way. And unless someone like us travels for themselves and sees it themselves and speaks directly with a non-Jewish professor who's teaching Yiddish at a university like we met, or a Jewish music festival, unless they're there, they're just never going to understand. I want to ask one more question about the article, and then we'll pivot to another topic. So there was one line highlighted in the article and the article was just published, I should say. There was one article highlighted that I really feel very accurately sums up the entire article, which is the future of Jewish life in Poland is neither established nor secure, but nor is it foreclosed. Poland is an opportunity. And Arnie, if you could touch on this, I feel like the entire article hits on so many different points, but it really ends kind of with this feeling of indecision, right? You don't really know how to feel or where the future is heading. So kind of explain that one line to me and what you hope people take away when they finish reading the article. And Laura, if you want to weigh in after as well.
I don't know that today we know what the future holds in the United States. I mean, you never know what the future holds. So in a sense, it's maybe it's not as favorable in Poland. Maybe it's more favorable in Poland. We can't know. I'd like to answer the question about that line just a little bit more broadly. I think there are some important elements to consider. Generations go by. The people who you meet in Poland today are not the people, for the most part, who were around during the Holocaust. Maybe there are a few. Maybe a few are descendants and they are protecting reputations. But for the most part, for the very most part, it's an entirely different generation with an entirely different experience. Are some of them informed by the anti-Semitism of the past? Undoubtedly. Is that more or less than throughout the rest of Europe? or the rest of the world. Who can say? In some cases, maybe, in some cases, probably not. It's important to remember that the anti-Semitism was perhaps not so much a function of Polish culture as a function of religious history, the teachings of the church about the role of Jews and the death of Christ. And this is, of course, common throughout Europe. So there's a lot to consider when you look at Poland, as well as the fact that although the numbers of Jewish dead during the Holocaust in Poland vastly exceed other places, that is principally because that's where the Jews were. Collaboration undoubtedly occurred in Poland. None of it is excused by the fact that collaboration occurred elsewhere. All I'm saying really is that context is everything. And as we look at Poland, we can get utterly wrapped up in the past. We should be wrapped up in the past. But at the same time, it's very important. And as both of us felt in writing the article, when you read it, you'll see we look toward the light. We look toward the future. We toast to life. Judaism is not a death-oriented faith or culture or people. And so looking toward the future is critical. Poland is an opportunity. It is a rare post-Soviet country in that, somebody from the embassy described it to me as representing, I don't remember the exact words, but it was basically unbridled capitalism. They decided that they wanted to come into the modern age quickly and strongly. And that's what they've done. That major change is probably reflected broadly through the culture, the economic opportunity, forward-looking attitudes by many. So it is an opportunity, but given the history of anti-Semitism throughout Europe, and given what goes on in Europe much more broadly, even if it's not going on in Poland today, one never knows what the future will bring in terms of anti-Semitism. So that ambiguity is genuine. It's real. We all feel it. Nobody can say with confidence what the future is going to look like. But I had a great time in Poland. I loved it there. There were things about it that reminded me of my family. And I look forward to going back. So in that sense, I hope that the future is bright.
Laura, anything you want to add? And we could stay on the article about what you hope like the takeaway would be, the message for any of the readers.
Nothing to add other than I will just give Arnie credit for writing that beautiful sentence in the article because he is too humble to take credit himself.
I thought you wrote it.
That's so funny, Laura, because I asked him weeks ago on the phone who wrote that line, and he said he didn't remember and that he thought it was like you or Joint, or he had no idea.
It's all Arnie. In terms of takeaways, I mean, I think it sort of depends on the reader, right? Because I think one thing I was mindful of when we wrote this article was that I don't think anyone's going to like it, right? Like, I think people have very polarized views about Poland and the extent to which Jews should be engaging. And so I just hope that people can read this and maybe open their minds a little bit in either direction, right? Whether it's the people we met in Poland who are lovely, who I think understandably are a little reticent to really openly reckon with what happened there and what sort of the level of collaboration that occurred, or people on the other side, like family members of mine whose reaction to going to Poland was like, why on earth does she want to go there? Why would you open that door? I think like there's space on both sides to move. And I just hope that we've given people a little taste of both sides of that coin and the opportunity that exists between those two polars.
Yeah, I love that. It was really, it was so beautifully written. I was so impressed. I shared it all over social media, and our group, our Poland group, was so supportive. And it just says so much about the two of you that you spend so much time writing this, because it's really a reflection from all of us. Right. It's a way that we can all remember this trip so vividly. Yeah, and our emotions, because it's so easy to forget how you felt in that moment. And like 2 years later to see that, or a year and a half later, like to see this, it just brought back so many feelings.
Well, it's definitely informed by like the comments and thoughts that we shared with everyone on our trip.
No, for sure. Spinning a bit off both of those comments, uh, I, I'm not sure the article is really popular. I think it makes people uneasy.
And that's the best type of article, right? Who wants something comforting?
And I've gotten a few comments back, but I think if I post a picture of myself on Facebook standing on top of a mountain or in front of the Great Falls, I'll get 50 likes. When I posted the article, the reaction was much more tepid. I think the subject makes people nervous. I think it makes people feel uneasy. And I think that is utterly understandable. There are things about our trip that still bring some tears to my eyes. There are aspects of Laura's reactions to things. I read her book. I can't recommend her book enough. The book and some of her expression in the article also can bring tears to my eyes. It is very, very difficult. It's a hard subject matter. However, I think that Jews owe themselves a close look, not only to understand the history, to understand the present in the context of that history, but to also understand our own feelings. We should be willing to see positivity when it's there. This, I think, is part of being Jewish. It's part of choosing life. It's part of looking for the light, is that we open our hearts and minds to recognizing when people are trying to help out and do the right thing. It's a challenge, but I think it's very important.
Well, I feel like the best work is work that makes you feel uneasy, right? I mean, who wants to write something or put out content that everyone else can put out? You guys worked on something that is so individually yours. And this is going to live on way more than the 50 likes of you standing on the mountain. So it's such important work. Okay, if you can believe it, we've been talking for pretty much 25 minutes, and I don't want to end it here. I want to do a few more minutes. I want to talk about some of the fun parts of our trip. So I feel like I didn't really describe what our trip was. So we were an 11-person, right? An 11-person trip to Poland. Laura was the youngest on the trip. I think I was the second youngest on the trip. And it was mostly people from the DC area, but we had people from all over the country who all come from, and we had non-Jews on the trip, who all come from, I guess, industries and organizations, or have some type of connection to Poland or its Jewish history, or I don't know, just fighting anti-Semitism. And it was such an honor. It was an all expenses paid trip, which I was skeptical about going on beforehand also, because you think, it's going to be like propagandistic. And it really wasn't. I mean, our guide, Adrian, we have to give him a shout out. He was so honest. And like you, he would make comments like what you said, Laura, like, yeah, we didn't do this soon enough, or it's not recognized, as widely as it should be. And I was just so impressed with the entire trip. And I have such like a longing to go back. So let's talk about some of our funniest memories from the trip, because we don't need to be all deep. There's still light and hope in Poland and among the Jewish people. Arnie, can you talk about really quickly how you and I first met at the airport and how it was love at first sight? And then Laura, maybe you could talk about Arnie getting soaked and any other fun memories.
Well, Dana knows how to flatter, and so I guess it was at the Frankfurt airport.
No, the Warsaw airport.
Warsaw. when we were all there, and Dana walked up to me and said, "You must be Arnie," which of course that's all I needed to hear because I am Arnie, and when I'm recognized for the Arnie that I am, doesn't that make all of us happy when somebody walks up to us?
I was stalking everyone on Facebook beforehand. Remember, Laura? I was like sending you pictures of everyone.
Dana had this great smile on her face. I knew at that point this was going to be a lot of fun, and it was.
We were pretty inseparable on the trip, the three of us and Adina and Matt. I mean, the whole group was so amazing. Laura, do you have any really funny memories from the trip? I can think of so many.
Well, Arnie running into a water fountain was probably the top, getting soaking wet.
No, it was a guy. It was a boy with a hose who flat out sprayed him.
Yeah.
We were in the city of Wrocław, which used to be part of Germany and now part of Poland. And it was a really hot day. And there was just a little boy with a hose. And Arnie's like, oh, I'm just going to walk through it. And then he saw Arnie and just decided to like completely drench him.
Totally
and it was
doused me.
It was just like such a, I remember that just being an emotional day because so much of that city is just like, is about Jewish life lost there. And just to like bring that levity to the situation was really funny.
I think that sort of encapsulates the trip. Like, we're in what was formerly Breslau, Germany. We're staying at the hotel where Hitler is like famed to have given speeches off the balcony. We're looking at all this like German architecture, very aware of what that means. And then we have these like incredible moments of levity being with people who have all these different perspectives, but just like so fundamentally quickly understood each other. And I think that made the trip so much more meaningful than just the act of traveling to these places and meeting with people alone, which was an incredible opportunity.
Terrific memory that I have is, and I think it was in Krakow. Dana comes downstairs in the morning from her room, and she is wearing a sweatshirt. And to my recollection, it had this huge Star of David on it. And Matt and I, another participant on the trip, looked at each other and said, there's Dana. She's going to go out into the world shouting, I am a Jew, to see what happens. And I wore a kippah in Krakow for the same reason, probably with much less style. But I was curious to see how that would be received. And there was nobody turned their head. Nobody cared. There was also the moment when we were touring Krakow and we were near a synagogue, and several gentlemen wearing talit walked past the door, and our guide, not Adrian, who was from the embassy, but our guide in Krakow, turned to these people and turned to us and essentially said, look, there are Jews. You know, there are some examples of Jews probably not recognizing that most of us were Jewish and that we had seen Jews before. Yeah. It's funny when you travel.
I think also, Arnie, let me know what you think, but that Friday afternoon when we went to the JCC and just watched the people come in from the Ride for the Living with just the absolute jovial, there was music, there was, people celebrating. It was so contrasted to the prior day when we were at Auschwitz and such a celebration of life that for me was like a real turning point.
I was with you two for that, but I remember that. It was amazing. For anyone unfamiliar, Ride for the Living happens annually, and it's about a 50-mile bike ride from Auschwitz to Krakow. So we happened to be there for that, which was amazing. Oh man, I could go on and on and on. This was it was such a pleasure to have you guys on today. You are welcome back anytime. Really quickly, Laura, let's promote The Shoemaker's Son. When was it published? How long did it take to write it? And how can people purchase it?
So it was published in fall of 2021. How long did it take to write was sort of a complicated question. Like, actually putting pen to paper and write was pretty much a year. I kind of did it mostly during the pandemic because I had this gift of time and sort of realized like this is something I wanted to do for a while. My grandpa was 98 at the time, and I recognized that like if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen while my poppy's still alive, which ended up being true. But it was, something I had known I wanted to do for a while. I remember as a kid talking to my grandparents, interviewing them, taking notes. As I got older, myself, my father, other family members would ask their stories. We'd do it in chunks and write it down and record it. So the actual legwork on the research happened for decades prior. And it was published by Amsterdam Publishers. It's available on Amazon and sort of major retailers in the US and internationally. And then I will also note, just for the record, that the article that Arnie and I wrote is published in Moment magazine. Maybe we can put it in the show notes or something so folks can find it easily.
Absolutely. And Arnie, Masorti, I didn't actually know anything about the foundation before I met you. So what is Masorti? Because I know, but share with us. It's a really interesting movement.
So we're all familiar with conservative Judaism in the United States. The Masorti Foundation that I chair supports conservative Judaism in Israel. It's called Masorti, which just means traditional. You could debate whether conservative Judaism is traditional or not. It is or it isn't, depending how you look at it. And you could say that perhaps about Hasidic Judaism as well. In Israel, the Orthodox control the outer trappings of the faith, the Jewish state part of Israel. They determine who are rabbis. They regulate marriages. They determine who has halachically converted. And Masorti, because it is not Orthodox, is generally on the periphery of all of that. So a Masorti rabbi is not considered a rabbi in Israel. A Masorti marriage, even if performed in Israel, is not considered a valid marriage in Israel. There needs to be a separate marriage that is halachically or legally acceptable. The list goes on and on. I'm not making a value judgment about how the Orthodox look at Judaism. In some ways, I have a foot in the Orthodox camp. So no judgment is imparted. But I do feel that there needs to be in Israel opportunities for people who do not wish to be Orthodox to have contact with the religious aspects of Judaism. Masorti offers that. It's very beautiful. I've participated in services over there. I love the people. It's a faith of hugging. It's quite wonderful. So I support that.
Beautiful. So, yeah, I know that my family there is very, very, very secular. So you kind of have Orthodox and secular and not much in between in Israel. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing to kind of find that middle ground there. So I love you both so, so much. I have so many more funny stories in my head that I would love to share. I'll text both of you after. But we could go on and on. That was just a life-changing trip. I wish you both so much success. I know we'll stay in touch. I loved our reunion last year. And anything I could ever do to support you, I'm always here for you. To everyone, of course. To everyone, the second you came out with this article, I'm like, you guys are coming on the podcast. I need to promote this as much as I can. So I really appreciate you taking the time. To everyone listening and watching, I hope you learned something today about Poland's history. If you have any questions about it, you can reach out to me, Arnie, or Laura anytime. Again, Laura Bakst, Arnie Podgorsky. Love you both. Thanks for being here. And thank you to all of you for tuning in to the Dana Download.